Our eXmark sales representative for Western Michigan, Bruce Vermeulen, is going to walk through the differences between the different series of the Lazer commercial mowers.
Hello, I'm Bruce Vermeulen with Power Equipment Distributors, and I'm here today to discuss the eXmark Lazer lineup, starting with the E series, the S series, and the X series. I'll be going through those three models, what's similar and what's different between them, and how to get more productivity and profitability as you go up the line. So all the models of Lazers, and we're talking about 60-inch decks between all the models here to keep it simple, all of them have the exact same frame for a 60-inch deck. No differences there, no differences in strength. Everything's the same. As you go through the deck shells on each machine on a 60-inch, the same depth shell on each machine. No differences there. There's differences that we'll get into on things that are attached to it. As far as the drive systems, they're all very similar between the E, S, and X series. No differences there. When you get into the X series, though, we'll get into the differences as they get bigger. The biggest thing as you go through the eXmark line on the Lazers from E, S, and X, it's not really a quality. It's more features get put onto the machine. So it's not that you're getting a lesser quality machine if you're buying an E versus an X. It just means there's fewer things. The engines may be less expensive, not as big a horsepower. Comfort, power, and speed goes as you go up in the lineup. So on the with that, also the size of the frames, the thickness of steel on everything is going to be the same throughout the lineup. Tires, wheels, very similar all the way through. Just again, as you go up, things get better with the tires on the X series versus what's on the E series. Things like that. We'll start here on the E series and move up through that and kind of tell you some of the differences. Probably the biggest difference there, 8-gallon fuel tank versus the other machines have a 12-gallon fuel tank. On the engines, start out of the Kohler 742 25 horsepower engine. There is also fuel injected options in the E series, but you can't go up to the larger horsepower engines like you can in the S and the X series. All of the units have a heavy-duty air cleaner on the engines. So you have the two-stage Donaldson air cleaners with an outside filter and inner pre-filter on it. That's on all the Lazers from the E, S, and X. Starting 60-inch Lazer, the front caster wheels are a pneumatic tire, whereas you go up in the lineup even the E series, you can get the semi-pneumatic or what they call a run-flat tire on them. These do help with ride, but longevity-wise, if you want to move up and get something that's more resistant to puncture, then you'd want to go up to the semi-pneumatic tires, or what they call the run flats. But same size caster wheel on all the models, all the way up through the lineup. The bearings in those wheels are the same through the lineup. There's no differences there. You do have the heavy-duty, greaseless front wheels, and that's one nice thing about all the Lazers. Is the maintenance on them is very little as far as greasing. You only have 4 grease zerks on all these machines that you have to maintain, and it's yearly, or every 500 hours, whichever comes first. The 4 grease zerks on the units, and this is for all of them, you have 2 grease zerks on the front caster yokes, and then one grease zerk on the tension arm for the deck belt tensioning, and the belt tensioning arm for the transmission belt tension. It's only 4 of them. And it's a yearly, every 500 hours that needs to be done. And all the machines have a sticker here right in front of the seat that show when that needs to be done and time frames. So you don't have to have your owner's manual out. And that's a common feature through all these. It really eliminates the amount of time you have to spend cleaning off every grease zerk, getting the grease gun, making sure it's got grease in it, and then going out there and doing it. Because if you did it the way some manufacturers require you to, you'd have hours into it every 50 hours, getting that done on every machine, where the eXmark, you run it at the end of the year, all you have to do is clean the deck, change oil. That's your greasing, that's your maintenance routine on the mower going forward. So your lubrication maintenance is very minimal on the eXmark as far as greasing, once a year. Outside of your normal oil changes, keeping the unit cleaned off, checking tire pressures, things like that. That's all the maintenance you have on the machine. So very, very low cost of maintenance to these machines, which adds to your profitability. If you're having to pay someone after hours when you're done at the end of the day to spend that extra time going through greasing everything up, it just takes more time, more materials. They've worked that out with eXmark. Uh, Moving on to the fuel tanks on these machines, the E-Series, like I said, does have an 8-gallon fuel tank, where when you go to the S and the X, you're getting a 12-gallon fuel tank. So longer run times on those machines, so it's less stops where you have to go to the refuel during the day. Typically run smaller engines on the Lazer E-Series, so they can run longer. They don't take as much fuel as the bigger horsepower engines do. However, that can be an issue for some people that are mowing 10 hours a day that want to make sure they don't have to stop to fill up. Then an S and an X would be the option for you. The nice thing about the fuel tanks that is similar on all the models is they're all mounted below the seat. We used to mount them up on top. A lot of companies still do that up on the sides where you have 2 tanks to fill. Now it's just a single point to fill on each machine. It's been that way for a while. That keeps, and having that tank underneath the seat keeps the center of gravity down low, so it makes this machine much more stable on hills and certain inclines. Also, with the single point, you're not having to fill up one side, stop, go to the other. If you're at a gas station, you can just put the hose in, put the nozzle in, hit it, and go, and get the other ones ready to go. It's not filling up 2 tanks. There's no valve to switch from side to side on each tank with those. Small feature, but it's definitely one that's been in the lineup. The deck sizes available in the Lazer E are 48, 52, 60, and 72 inch. One thing to note: the 48-inch deck is only available on the Lazer E series. As we move up the line, the LZS that comes in a 52-inch, 60, and 72, and also is available with a 60-inch rear discharge and 72-inch rear discharge. When you go into the LZX series, that comes with 60-inch and 72-inch deck sizes available. There is also a 96-inch, but we are covering that in another video. As I said before, the deck shells are the same between all the models. So there's no difference in the depth. A lot of people see that there's Series 4 decks. It's a Series 4 deck on a Lazer E, Series 4 deck on a Lazer S, and a Series 6 deck on a Lazer X. And people tend to think that that has different depth sizes. They're all exactly the same depth size. There's no changes in that between the models. The differences are between the Series 4 on the on the Lazer E series to the Lazer S series. There's no difference in those 2 decks. When you get into the Lazer X, that's when there's a difference. On the spindles on the decks on a Series 4 deck, there's 2 bearings in each spindle, one on top, one on the bottom. When you get into the Series 6 deck, they put 4 bearings in there. So that gives you a much stronger, robust bearing in that system, which will last a lot longer than these 2. Both good on this side and that, both all non-greasable. No differences as far as longevity in these 2. When you do get to the Lazer X, though, with the 4 bearings per spindle, that will last longer than what these bearings will. All of them are aluminum spindle housings, which dissipate heat very well. The aluminum spindle housing is also designed to break away. So if you do hit something very hard to where it's going to break the spindle apart, it'll break that instead of bending the deck. On the mower decks, with the talking about the spindles, the blade tip speed between all these decks is exactly the same. We still run the 18,500 feet per minute blade tip speed on each machine. There's no difference. If you go to a different engine size, it's the same between those. Like I say, the big difference is going to be in the spindle itself with the bearings on the LZX, which makes that tougher and longer lasting. The rest of them, though, cut quality between the decks, very similar. No differences there. You're going to have the exact same baffle design on the deck through all the models. Another thing about the decks on the eXmarks, all single belt, running in a straight line. There's no horizontal engines anymore where the belt has to go down, around, and to the deck. It's all in a straight line plane now, which gives us much longer life on the belts. They're not having to go through as many angles. If it runs straight, the belt's going to last longer. We do that on all the machines. The belts are toolless on these, so if you ever have to replace a belt in the field, you don't have to take off any guards with wrenches. It can all be done with your hands. There's everything spring-loaded tension on the belts. There's no tight things you have to tighten down with a wrench. You can do it all in the field manually. So if you do ever have a belt failure and you're an hour away from your shop or whatever and you have one on the truck, very easy to replace. The same goes for our transmission drive belts, and that's similar on all these. Everything can be done toolless. All the decks also have these quick release poly deck shields. We've had these for 10 years. They stay strong. They stay on. Very tough. Very easy to get at the deck for clean off after a day's use. Pull these off. You'll be able to blow them off very quickly. They just snap on. One more feature of the eXmark decks that's common between the mowers is the rear deck struts and Panhard bar. That is standard on all our 60-inch decks. We have two bars that are mounted to the back of the deck and back to the chassis. Then also what's called a Panhard bar that's at a diagonal to keep this deck stiff and tight, even after many hours of use. Will still keep that thing straight and true. On those on the deck struts on the back, there are rubber bushings inside those. So if you do hit something at speed, it's not metal on metal where something's going to bend. It can give and bounce back and will keep that deck tight and true for long periods of time, which means less adjustment if you've hit something, you have to adjust the deck to level it back out. A lot less work to do there. On deck leveling, the Lazer E series and S series both use chain style system for the lifts, for the hanging system on it. With a chain style lift versus when you go to the X series, you have a solid bar with a threaded nut, with a threaded bolt on top. The big difference between those are stronger than the chain setup and they won't wear, the bars won't. And if you do need to do deck leveling adjustments, it's very quick and simple with the LZX. You just loosen the jam nut, adjust the sides to front, back, wherever you need to adjust it. Where this style, you do have to loosen two nuts to do the adjustment on it. So it's a little plus to the LZX that makes that a much quicker machine if you do have to do any adjustments to it. The deck height on all the 60-inch machines goes from 1 inch to 5 inches, all adjustable in 1/4 inch increments between the machines. If you are buying multiple mowers, and one thing we run into is you get one that's supposed to be at 3 inches, but it's at 3 1/4, or one's at 3 1/2, and you try to get them all exactly the same. The eXmark deck lift system on these is very simple to adjust with just one bolt. Loosen up on the height of cut adjuster. You can adjust that whole piece and it'll raise the whole deck up and down up to 1/2 inch either way to make your fleet of mowers all identical. Very quick and easy to do. You don't have to go around to all 4 corners to do that on previous models and some of our competitors. So the deck height is just adjusted by putting this pin in whichever height setting on the side here. Put it at 3 here. Push the lever, pull back on the unlock, and drop it down. It'll sit there. If you do come up on things while you're mowing that you need to lift up over quickly and not have to, you can just push the pedal and it'll lift up and back down. There's no, it won't lock. When you flip this forward, that's your transport lock, and that will lock it. So to unlatch it, push down and pull that back, and away you go. Makes that quick and easy. If you come up on a stump or something that you need to get up over and not have the blades hit, push on it, drop it back down, and you're back mowing again. All of the decks have a spring assist lift to help with depending on what size deck you have. The bigger decks, 72s, require a little more spring tension, which is fully adjustable here on the machine, where you can adjust if you need a little more help to lift up, especially if you've added a bagging system and want a little more help with the foot pedal. That is something that's adjustable on all the machines. The deck lift itself, again, we talked about the chains and the solid rods. The lift arms on the Lazer E and Lazer S are steel. When you go into the Lazer X, you get the heavier duty cast iron ones, which can take more abuse. As we said before, as you go from the E, S, and X, all good quality machines, just differences, power, and comfort come into play. Starting with the E series, most of the models have a suspension seat standard on them. There's a couple or one that does not. But has just the standard suspension seat with the armrest, with adjustable dial to adjust to your weight. As you go up to the S, then you get the tilt frame ISO mount system, which means you still have suspension seat, but now it's mounted on top of rubber isolator mounts that give the seat a side to side and a little more cushion to it. So if you do hit a rut, and you go to the side, it'll absorb that energy as well. The X series has that same setup. So again, going from the E, just more comfort as you go up to the S and into the X, same setup on that. So moving from the E to the S on the engines, start out with a 749 Kohler EFI, and there's also Kawasaki carbureted options throughout the S series. We're limited to the 749 and 801 in that range. And then as you go up into the X series, then you have the option you start out at the Kawasaki 801, go to a much larger 921 if you'd like more horsepower and carbureted. And then the EFI engines with our RedTech system start out with the Kohler Big Block 980 on that engine. That's 38 horsepower, which gives you plenty of horsepower and great fuel economy between them. So as you go up through the lineup, you can get bigger engine options on the S and even bigger on the X to our largest engine options. Another thing, as we're going through talking about the drive system on the machines, the Lazer E and Lazer S both have the same Parker unitized hydraulic drive system. When you go into the Lazer X, same basic system, just larger capacity. You're going to 16 cc pumps versus 12 on these two. What that means for you is your 10 mile an hour ground speed on these, 11.5 mile an hour ground speed on this machine, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that's a 15% increase in ground speed, which will help with transport speeds back to your trailer and times when you're not mowing, because we all know you don't want to mow at 12 miles an hour. So when you go moving into the X series with the RedTech Kohler EFI equipped units, now you're have a system that gets up to 45% better fuel economy with lots of horsepower. So if you're the customer that likes it's going to run a bagging system or mulches and wants a lot of power to be able to power through heavier stuff and still get good fuel economy, the RedTech system on the Kohler EFI is the way to go. So with the RedTech system being an EFI engine and a way to adjust your RPM settings of what speed you're going to mow at, gives us up to 45% better fuel economy over a comparable engine. Plenty of power in the RedTech, great fuel economy. Another feature of that machine is that it does have they call it clutch saver. So when you turn one of the mower decks on these machines, you're supposed to idle it back to half throttle, engage the mower deck, and then throttle it back up. With a RedTech system, it does that for you all electronically. So it slows the engine down, engages the deck, and throttles it back up. Same thing when you turn the engine off, or when you turn the deck off and disengage it, it will slow the engine down to an acceptable speed, disengage the deck, and then throttle the motor back up to what operating speed it needs to be at. That saves the clutch life because it does wear on startup and when you shut the clutch off to hit the brake. With that, if you have employees that are running your machines that just run it wide open and turn the deck on and off, it cuts your clutch life in half. With this, you don't have to worry about training everyone to pull the throttle back, engage a clutch, which clutches we know are not inexpensive and can make the machine last longer, and that comes back to your profitability and productivity. Less downtime, less money spent on maintenance on parts. Another feature of the RedTech system is with oil consumption, or if you're not one that likes to check the oil daily, the RedTech system will monitor oil pressure and oil temperature. So if oil pressure or oil drops to below a certain level, or oil temperature gets above a certain level, it will shut the mower deck off, put the system into a limp mode, and bring it back, which will save you from buying a complete new engine potentially if it catches that in time. So that way your employee or whoever's running the machine will know something's wrong. Hey, it's not cutting grass. The machine's doing its job to make sure it saves that engine. When you get in the bigger block engine, that's not an inexpensive repair. You want to make sure you have that protection. That's where the RedTech system comes in. Eliminates a lot of the hassles of worrying about every little thing on the mower. The RedTech system also has maintenance reminders. We'll tell you when to change. It will tell you when it's time to change the engine oil and when it is time to change the transmission fluid. Another common feature of all the machines is the 4 points of tie down. Every Lazer has 4 points, 2 in the front, 2 in the back, for you to strap down to meet your DOT requirements for 4 points of connection. So to summarize everything, if you're buying into the Lazer E-Series, don't feel you're getting any less quality. It's just as you go up in the lineup, there's more comfort, more engine options. The E-Series, good price points, has the same eXmark ultra cut deck that gives the legendary cut quality we've known for years with eXmark. Heavy duty drive system, good frames, just not as many extras on it and not as big a horsepower options. The Lazer E-Series giving you the 8-gallon fuel tank, again moving up to the S-Series, going up to a 12-gallon fuel tank. More time mowing, less time back to the truck to refill or back to a gas station. And then from the S-Series on up to the X, you continue with that 12-gallon fuel tank, so more capacity there. As you go up to the S, again, step up a little more comfort with the ISO mount system, more engine options. Rear discharge is an option in this version. Mainly comfort and engine options as you go into the S-Series. And then and then finally moving up to the X-Series, you're getting the biggest, most powerful engines and most efficient engines that we offer. Highest ground speed, toughest blade spindles, tougher deck lift system, very strong system all around. If you're adding Red Tech to the system, also eliminates a lot of the maintenance reminders, is already built into the machine. Clutch saver, the oil alerts, so if you get low on oil pressure or too high on oil temperature, to know to check. Lots of things there to help you save you money down the road and be more productive. So in conclusion, this is Bruce Vermeulen with Power Equipment Distributors, and we just covered the Lazer Z lineup with covering the E-Series, S-Series, and X-Series. If there's any of these you have questions on or would like to get a demo on, please contact your Weingartz sales representative, and they can help you with any further questions. Thank you.